Everyone is paying attention to those big names in week 1 of fantasy football, but there's some lower level guys that you really need to pay attention to because these guys could turn into some of the top waiver wire additions in 2025, and we like to be ahead of the curve. That's right, it's week 1 of the fantasy football season. While a lot of people aren't clamoring to the waiver wires right now, today we're talking about 15 must-watch players here in week 1 and probably the first couple weeks of the season because these guys could become must-adds at some point this year. Now, I highly, and I mean highly recommend that you add these players to your waiver wire watch list. It really gives you a quick reference of the players that you're really wanting to monitor from week to week because I know life gets busy and sometimes we just need to simplify some things, and this is a great way to do so. Now we're diving right in, so if you're ready for week 1 fantasy football, do me a favor, hit the like button, leave a comment down below, and let's talk about our first player, Josh Palmer of the Buffalo Bills. Now Palmer is currently 23% owned, so widely available in a lot of leagues out there, and he is the current starting outside wide receiver opposite of Keon Coleman in Buffalo. He is, in my opinion, the best all-around wide receiver in Buffalo. Now for Keon Coleman, he's a big play machine. He's going to win those 50-50 balls down the field more times than not than anyone else in Buffalo. He had 57 targets last year, and almost 1/3 of them were considered deep targets. His average depth of target was 15.2 yards, 8th highest among all NFL wide receivers. Then we also have Khalil Shakir, who lives in the slot. 402 slot snaps in just 15 games last season. He's more of the underneath guy. His average depth of target was only 5.5 yards last year and ranked 105th among NFL wide receivers, which brings us to Josh Palmer. He can play inside, he can play outside. He is a capable possession wide receiver and has that big play potential. Now, I don't want to come out here and say that he is Stephon Diggs in this offense, but he can easily play that style of role in this Buffalo offense this season. If we can see him go out in the first week or two and be over 5 targets a game, especially in week 1 in a matchup going up against Baltimore, he becomes very intriguing very quickly. Remember, one of the top things to look for in fantasy football are players that are on the top offenses in football, and Buffalo could very easily be in that mix once again. Now, after him is Malik Washington of the Miami Dolphins, and he's only 2% owned, so he is widely available in leagues out there, but he is the current starting slot wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, and you know how much we love our slots around here. Now, Waddle and Hill, they've struggled to stay healthy at times. People talk about that more than anything when talking about the Miami wide receivers, and Washington just needs a chance here in his second year. His last year in college 2 years ago, he had 110 receptions for over 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. Now, that chance that he needs could be coming this year out of the slot. Jonnu Smith played 227 snaps in the slot last year, and now he's gone. We really need to pay attention to how much Malik Washington is on the field in week 1. If he's on the field for over 30 offensive snaps and can see a few targets in this matchup, he is definitely going to be intriguing, especially for those in deeper leagues. Now, after him, we got Booty rocking everywhere. Kayshon Boutte of the New England Patriots, only 1% owned. A guy widely available in your fantasy football leagues right now. And this may be somewhat of a hot take, but it's not meant to be because you've heard me talk about this guy this offseason. But he may be the best wide receiver in New England right now. He's currently starting on the outside opposite of Stephon Diggs. Kayshon Boutte was the most explosive wide receiver in New England last year towards the end of the year with Drake May under center. He was one of the best wide receivers in camp this season. He has a new offense coming to New England with Mike Vrabel as the head coach and Josh McDaniels returning as the offensive coordinator. But that's nothing new to Kayshon Boutte. He has had a different offensive coordinator every year of his college and NFL career. The guy is a former first-round prospect. The dude was just surrounded by studs his last year in college. Guys like Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and tight end Mason Taylor. If this guy can pick up where he left off last year, and he's on the field for like 45 to 50 snaps a week, he will be somebody that I will personally be adding immediately, especially in those deeper leagues. But real quick, before we continue, I know it's Monday morning and it's a holiday, but I'm feeling damn great this morning, and sure, it's because the season is right around the corner, but there's also something else that has the juices flowing. I'm talking about something for those that are on the grind that never stops, for warriors that never quit. 1.01 is finally here, the #1 overall pick in coffee, and I am damn glad to have it in my cup this morning. I'll be drinking it all year long. They got French roast, breakfast blend, French vanilla, in ground or in whole beans, whatever you're looking for, they got it. So if you drink coffee and you want to wake and attack the day, now is your chance. Because it's time to go brew resilience and live relentless over at opzocoffee.com. That's opzocoffee.com. There's links down below in the description. I'm telling you, if you drink coffee, you want to give it a shot. But all right, back to some of those must-watch players. And the first guy we're talking about is Efton Chisholm, wide receiver of the New England Patriots, only 1% owned, but that may not be the case for much longer, because he isn't just some random, undrafted free agent that made the Patriots' 53-man roster, and then he's never going to see the field. No, you may not know who this kid is, but listen to what he just accomplished in college. Among 474 FBS and FCS wide receivers last year that had at least 50 targets, listen to where this kid ranked. He was first in receptions, first in yards after the catch, second in targets, tied for second in first downs, tied for third in missed tackles forced. He was fourth in receiving yards, tied for fifth in receiving touchdowns. He was fifth in percentage of targets caught, and he was ninth in yards per route run. He was one of only 2 players in Eastern Washington's history to surpass 300 career receptions. The other player was Cooper Kupp, and he also broke Cooper Kupp's record by getting a catch in 53 straight games. Now he joins a Josh McDaniels offense in New England that made guys like Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola, and Jacoby Myers slot gods. Now he needs to get past Demario Douglas, but I will not be shocked if he finds his way into weekly offensive snaps quickly. Now after him is Kevontae Turpin, wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys, and he's only 3% owned as of right now. Now, despite Jerry out there going all in Dallas, the team has just gone backwards since he said that. And all offseason, we have talked about how this may be the worst running attack that Dallas has had in most people's memories. And if that's the case, that only helps out a guy like Kevontae Turpin. Dude is an absolute burner with 4.3 speed, and with the new offense coming to Dallas with Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach, you have to think that Turpin is going to get more looks. Do not be surprised if we see more of him on the field and less of Jalen Tolbert this year. And I say that because George Pickens does what Jalen Tolbert does, but does it a lot better. And we already know that CeeDee Lamb is living in the slot and dominating. That means that Turpin, who is an elite speedster, could be an extension of the running game. Plus, we also know he's one of the best return men in football and always has that chance at 6 whenever they kick it to him. For sure, a name that you need to watch at the start of the season, not some immediate ad. But if he's being included weekly in the passing game, he could become very interesting. Now, next up is Isaac Tesla of the Detroit Lions, only 8% owned. And if I had to guess, that 8% came over the last week or so once we knew he was going to be a starter in Detroit. And I can't help but feel some Puka Nacua vibes surrounding Isaac Tesla, and I'm not talking about the potential rookie production part. More so, not a huge college career, wasn't drafted super early, but plays so hard that he earns a role and you just can't keep him off the field. Now, he is obviously going to have a lot more competition for targets in Detroit than what Puka had his rookie year in LA. We know that Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams are going to stay top options, but Tesla is a total Dan Campbell type of player and has already earned that starting role after they shipped out Tim Patrick. Now he's going to be starting outside opposite of Jamison Williams. This preseason, Tesla, 9 of his 10 catches were for either a first down or a touchdown. Whether it's contested catches, body control, he just refuses to let defenders beat him. Now, he may not be some big-time volume guy, but if you were to tell me right now that at the end of the season he outproduces Jamison Williams, it wouldn't surprise me. Now, I don't think that happens this year, but in this offense, Tesla could become a deep league option fairly early in the season. Now up next is Christian Kirk of the Houston Texans. He's 40% owned, one of the higher owned guys that we're talking about here in this show. But he is a former top 12 wide receiver in fantasy, and just no one pays attention to him anymore, especially after Houston brought in a couple rookie wide receivers in the draft in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. But Kirk is the starting slot wide receiver in Houston, a spot that we have seen Houston utilize a ton in the past with Tank Dell. But we know that Tank Dell is still hurt, and now Christian Kirk gets his huge chance to play that role. He's been one of the best slot wide receivers in the NFL for a couple years. He's just struggled to stay healthy. Well, this Houston running game is also not healthy right now. It's hurting. Mixon is on IR. Chubb is coming off a major injury. Dameon Pierce has been highly inefficient, and then we have an unproven rookie in Woody Marks. Houston could easily, and I mean easily, lean on the short passing game to keep the chains moving in this offense. If that's the case, Christian Kirk becomes the binky of CJ Stroud. Now, if you're worried about CJ Stroud because of last year, let it go. A QB that loses all three of his top wide receiver weapons at some point in the season is probably going to struggle. It's a new year, and Christian Kirk could have a role this season. Now after him is Hunter Renfrow in Carolina, and he's only 2% owned. Everyone bailed on him when he didn't make the 53-man roster. Well, now Jalen Coker is on IR, and they have brought back Hunter Renfrow. We also know that Adam Thielen is no longer there. He is now in Minnesota. We have seen Renfrow produce in the NFL in the past, and he is primed to prove that he belongs once again. Head coach Dave Canellis was behind figuring out throwing Chris Godwin in the slot and really unlocking his potential. He could do the same thing this year in the slot with Hunter Renfrow. He could easily become a target hog in this offense to start the season. Now that also begs the question, what happens when Coker returns? And I know there's a lot of Jalen Coker fans out there. I like the kid myself. But if Hunter Renfrow balls out the first month of the season, they're not just going to cut him. He'll continue to have some form of a role going forward. So if you find yourself needing a wide receiver early on in the season, don't forget about Hunter Renfrow. Now after him is Torrey Horton of the Seattle Seahawks. He's only 3% owned right now, but he's the current wide receiver 3 in Seattle, and he played so well in camp that they sent MVS packing. He's making all kinds of plays this offseason. Seattle really needs that big-bodied, big-play wide receiver. That is Torrey Horton. We all know that Cooper Kupp is not the model of health, and both Kupp and JSN have really been more of slot guys throughout their career. But Horton can easily be that downfield guy in this offense, the quote-unquote DK Metcalf role. He's got ridiculous hands, he can win the 50-50 ball, and he's capable of being a volume wide receiver. He's definitely a name you want to pay attention to. After him is Ollie Gordon, running back of the Miami Dolphins. He's 28% owned as of right now. And with the injury to Jalen Wright, Ollie Gordon is currently the running back 2 in Miami. But you also need to remember that Devon Achane has been dealing with a calf injury. He's supposed to be good to go for week 1, but they may ease him back slowly so he doesn't re-aggravate it or make it worse. Ollie could be looking at an immediate opportunity because we have seen Miami utilize multiple running backs for years, and he looked great this offseason. 126 yards, 101 of them came after contact, and he had 8 rushing first downs. The guy has had a 2,000-yard season with 22 touchdowns back in 2023 as a member of Oklahoma State. He's capable of catching passes out of the backfield, and if he plays well, with Jalen Wright hurt, he could easily earn that RB2 role all year long in Miami, which gives him immediate value. Now after him is another rookie running back. It's Woody Marks, who's currently 10% owned. Now Woody Marks may not be looking at the potential immediate volume like Ollie Gordon is, but he still could have a shot this season. We know that Joe Mixon is out at least, and I mean at least, the first month of the season. How about Nick Chubb coming off a major injury where he doesn't look like his old self either? And now Houston still has Dameon Pierce in the mix, who's one of the most inefficient running backs over the last few seasons. Now sure, Pierce will get a chance, but it's not like Houston has really shown a lot of faith in him over the last couple of years. If they did, they wouldn't have went out and drafted Woody Marks to begin with. But Woody can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's solid in pass pro. He looked really good this offseason. He may just need a little bit more time. Does Mixon end up missing extended time this year? Can Nick Chubb handle volume coming off of an injury? Does Dameon Pierce continue to barely get over 4 yards per carry? If any of those answers are yes, we could be looking at some immediate value for Woody Marks in 2025. Now, after him is a tight end, the football kind. Of course, we're keeping it classy in week 1. We're talking Mason Taylor of the New York Jets. He's currently 12% owned, and historically, we have seen Justin Fields rely on the tight ends in his offense. It's just always been an area that he looks at. Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham were heavy targets for Fields when they were in Chicago. In fact, listen to this. In the 4 years that Fields started in Chicago, the tight end position averaged 113 targets, 78 catches, 745 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That right there, top 8 tight end numbers. Taylor, already highly involved with the number 1 offense. He's expected to be the week 1 starting tight end, and he could actually be the potential number 2 target overall in New York for Justin Fields. He's been making plays all over the field. He has that NFL pedigree. His dad, former Hall of Famer Jason Taylor, and the kid is the LSU record holder in receptions in yards as a tight end. And oh yeah, he's 6'5", 255 pounds, and ran a 4.6 40. If you find yourself needing a tight end on the waiver wire, one that's highly available, Mason Taylor's a name you need to know. Now, after him is Taj Brooks, running back of the Cincinnati Bengals, only 2% owned as of right now, and everyone knows we are all about some Chase Brown over here. But do we think that Samaje Perine is the next best option in Cincinnati if something, God forbid, were to happen to Chase Brown? No, not really. Samaje Perine hasn't had over 700 total yards in a season since the year I started this channel in 2017. Over his 8-year career, he has a total of 3,400 total yards and 16 touchdowns. Taj Brooks, over his last 2 seasons in college, had 3,300 total yards and 28 touchdowns at Texas Tech. Now, Brooks is one of the best backs in the country at taking nothing and turning it into something as well. He's 5'10", 220 pounds, and can do everything that Samaje Perine can do, but do it better. If anything were to happen to Chase Brown, it's going to be Taj Brooks that gets a huge role in this Cincinnati offense. But what I want to do is watch him even when Chase Brown is healthy. How much is he on the field early in the season? Because that is going to be a huge tell of what type of role he could have if Chase Brown were to go down. I also wanted to include a couple quarterbacks though. How about Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars? He's currently 45% owned. This is a quarterback that prior to last season had back-to-back years of 4,000 plus yards passing and at least 25 total touchdowns. In 2022, the guy was getting MVP votes, and now no one wants him on their fantasy team. But I don't know about you, but if you look at the situation right now, I think it's even better than what he used to have when he was putting up huge numbers. He looked great this preseason. He has 2 stud wide receivers in Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. He has another big play guy in Diami Brown and a massive athletic tight end in Brenton Strange. But on top of all of that, he also has a new head coach in Liam Cohen, who is one of the guys behind the turnaround of Baker Mayfield. Cohen led a top 10 NFL passing offense last year in Tampa Bay. Plus, Trevor Lawrence doesn't get enough credit for the production he gets in fantasy football from his legs. Did you know that since 2022, he has the same amount of rushing touchdowns as Lamar Jackson with 12? And last year in Tampa Bay, under Liam Cohen, Baker Mayfield doubled his career high in single season rushing yards. If he starts off hot, there are going to be a lot of people rushing to pick up and start Trevor Lawrence off the waiver wire in 2025. Now, last but not least is Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers. He's currently 27% owned, and after he got his job back last season, from week 13 on, Bryce Young was the quarterback 6 overall in fantasy football. Over that span, he averaged over 21 fantasy points per game and outscored the likes of Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. But then Carolina went out this year and added yet another weapon, arguably one of the better wide receivers in the NFL draft, Teteroa McMillan. But they also added another piece that I think a lot of people are still overlooking despite him making the 53-man roster, and that's Jimmy Horn as well. Now, they did just lose Jalen Coker to the IR. They traded away Adam Thielen. Yes, that matters, but they did bring back Hunter Renfrow, and he is going to help Carolina extend drives by keeping the offense on the field, just picking up their first downs. Their offensive line in Carolina is much improved. It's a top 12 unit entering the season. In a second year of a Dave Canellis offense, Bryce Young could definitely pop off, and a lot of people aren't expecting it. If he plays well early on, everyone is going to be looking at him as Baker Mayfield 2.0. So there you have 15 players that you really need to watch in week 1 of fantasy football. Now, I'm going to be here every single Monday morning, making sure you have the waiver wire information you need to make the best decisions for your team. But starting in week 2, I'm also going to be doing a second show on Mondays. We're really going to be diving into the consistency of players in fantasy football, really trying to identify those who produce most frequently, those who really struggle from time to time, what causes those struggles. So you definitely want to stay tuned and be sure to hit the subscribe button. Now, I know we're all pumped for week 1 of the fantasy football season, and if you are as well, do me a favor if you haven't already and hit the like button. Now, as we close out today's show, I want to know one thing. Out of the 15 players we talked about today, which one are you watching most on the waiver wire?